Guys, so this is What If Spider-Man was in Young Justice Part 8. Now, last time, Part 7, I introduced that character of and Eddie Brock and a bunch of other characters. Not a bunch of other characters. I'm getting off track, but to put it simple, I introduced the character of Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock's going to be a recurring villain, but the Justice League and Young Justice will face during the whole entirety of the whole seasons, all up until season 4. If I get this, what if the season 4 Venom is still going to be a recurring villain? So he's going to be a current villain. In season 2, I am going to bring in Venom. I am going to bring in Carnage. In season 2, I'm going to bring Carnage and a bunch of other symbiotes. And I'm going to be, making a bunch of other counterparts like, Spider-Man in this universe. He was pulled from his dimension into this universe. And basically, it's simple. I'm going to introduce doppelgangers and also a bunch of other stuff basically into this whole entire Young Justice universe, like a doppelganger of Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn, the Lizard, a bunch of other doppelgangers that will eventually, just because of multiversal reasons, and since this Spider-Man's in this universe, Spider-Man will intervertally create his heroes or his allies in his universe's origin, maybe introducing this universe's Daredevil, and also a bunch of other stuff like, inadvertently creating his greatest villains in this universe for him to deal with later on. Now, basically, let's dive right into the video. Now, this is going to be more about Artemis and Peter, but they're not going to be a ship. Now, I was going to make Peter and Megan a ship, but I'm pretty sure I already made I've already made Connor and Megan a ship, and I'm going to I think I shipped Peter with Santana, maybe, but basically Peter's eventual or final ship is going to be somewhat near somewhere near the end of this series or near the beginning of season 2. Now, season 2, if you haven't heard my plans for season 2, I'm going to bring in a bunch of other different symbiotes and stuff like that. And the first couple episodes are going to be Peter, but Peter's eventually going to meet with this universe's Miles Morales. But let's stop talking about the future and let's just get into the video. Now, let's start the video off with episode 23. So I last left off in episode 22 when I was talking about the Justice League considering letting Peter onto the team. Now, I start the story off with Deck, I don't remember his name, but Black Spider hunting down a journalist and basically hanging him from a building, prepared to kill him, saying that he should have kept his mouth shut. Basically, the journalist had a kid, and his daughter was watching the whole thing. And this would be done by Black Spider. Now, Black Spider would have let go, letting the journalist hit the ground, but out of nowhere, Artemis would have saved him with a foam arrow. Basically, her trying to go after Black Spider. And now, Artemis would have been accompanied by Green Arrow. Black Spider would have started to crawl away as fast as possible, getting away from these two. And the little girl would have been watching Artemis and Green Arrow with, hope in her eyes, and also very much excitement. Now it gets switched to Sportsmaster, sneaking into a nearby building, or, a straight-up prison, and basically getting in there. Now, as we get switched back to Artemis fighting Black Spider would have been straight up double tapping both of them. Like, straight up just handling both of them. Now, as Sportsmaster would have snuck into the jail, he would have came across, I think, Daro, or the same guy that made Amazo. Now, as Black Spider would have started to get his butt handed to him by, Green Arrow and, Artemis, and he would eventually get captured, Peter would have swung by, basically him landing Superman style or Spider-Man, perch style, him basically looking around and saying, I guess you guys can actually handle yourselves. Peter pretty much saying or explaining that he was watching the whole thing from like another building and basically just waiting for them to fail so he can swoop in. But basically what happened is pretty much after that, Artemis and Green Arrow would have started to go to pretty much the voice, or not the voice box, but the phone booth to get back to Mount Justice. As pretty much Artemis would have said goodbye to Green Arrow, basically Green Arrow saying goodbye as well, as she would have gone to Mount Justice through the phone machine, basically it teleporting her to Mount Justice. As Speedy would have showed up, or Red Arrow would have showed up talking to Green Arrow, trying to figure out what's going on. As Green Arrow would have, Green Arrow and Red Arrow's story isn't going to be that much changed, since Peter would have swung off and would have actually gone back to Mount Justice with Artemis. Now, basically, after this, pretty much Spidey would have gone right back to the portal, him saying that he forgot something, him just wanting to get outside and do a little bit of patrol like he normally did back in his universe, and basically he would go out and patrol. Now, as he would be doing this, as Sportsmaster and a bunch of other people would have been doing the exact same thing. Sportsmaster and Red Arrow and Green Arrow's story would have happened similar to the same. It happening on the same time. Peter's running around, taking down crimes, stuff like that. As Peter would have been taking down crimes, swinging around the buildings, he would eventually came across the shop, or pretty much the store, that the two robbers were captured or taken down with by Red Arrow and Green Arrow. So basically, after Red Arrow and Green Arrow basically take down the shop, basically pretty much Peter swings by, but he makes his way down to Gotham City. Basically him trying to figure out what happened with the symbiote. Him trying to figure out where it went. Now, as he would have, still figured out the whole entire Venom thing, basically, he would have his first brawl with this universe's Venom. Now, basically, as he would be walking through the sewers, him finding a trail from yesterday scratched down into a sewage pipe or sewage line in the church. Basically, him opening up the sewage line and jumping in there. As he would be going through the sewers, he would eventually find claw marks that, were or belonged to Killer Croc, but Killer Croc wasn't in the sewer tunnel anymore. It was something else, something more, I guess, vicious. Now, basically, as he would be walking around, he would hear out of nowhere, pretty much, Peter Parker at the top of somebody's lung in a very deep and menacing voice. As he would look behind himself, his spider sense not going on, or it's not going off, and Venom pretty much, body slamming him into the sewage water. So pretty much what would happen is, as they're making a struggle, pretty much Peter trying to get out of the grip of Venom, as he would push Venom away, Venom getting up on his feet in this type of position, pretty much Peter getting up and looking around, as his mask would have been slightly ripped and his suit kind of trashed, as he would look towards Venom, basically being shocked, because this suit was fireproof and it could take a lot of beatings, but it was ripped just by getting strangled and scratched underneath the water. And basically, as he would start to get up on the side of the sewer, basically trying to get, dry, him getting on the harder part of the sewer, being able to stand up, and basically, as he would look at the, creature, basically saying, what the heck, him remembering that symbol in the eyes and the expression in the body, basically him trying to figure out what the heck is going on, him trying to figure out, did it bond to somebody else? Now, as the mask would have opened up, showing this universe's Eddie Brock, and surprisingly, this universe's Eddie Brock would have looked identical to the Eddie Brock in Peter's universe. Peter being confused, and also, going into the depth of, if this is a multiverse, it would make sense that it would be different counterparts of my villains in this universe. Him wondering if it's a counterpart of him in this universe, but him surely, getting blocked out or snapped out of that memory or that thought by Venom scraping him, or not just scraping him, cutting his throat. Now, as Peter would have sprinkled around trying to get better and better in this fighting guy, or trying to get better fighting this guy, him losing a lot of blood, him using some webs, or some first aid webs that he designed a couple days ago before the symbiote attached to him, basically then being able to patch up wounds and a bunch of other stuff without infecting them or getting them, encased in, chemicals like his weapons are made out of. As he would start to rush around out of the sewers trying to get out, as he would have started to black out, he would have jumped out of a sewer line on the side of Gotham City, him falling into the water or into the ocean. As at this point, Lacan would have been swimming around, just doing a little bit of a, just, I guess, stretching his legs, as he would come across Peter's dying body, as he would grab Peter out of the water. As as pretty much Aqualad would have pretty much gotten Peter down to Mount Justice, rushing him in there, getting him into Mount Justice, and basically Red Tornado being there. Red Tornado wondering what was happening, as pretty much, well, Aqualad would have said that I found him in the water near Gotham, and near Gotham City's bay, and basically he was, bleeding out. Basically saying that the webbing near his neck was the only thing keeping the blood in. And basically, as pretty much, well, Red Tornado would have taken Peter, as he would basically take Peter, and they would start to rush Peter down to the medical bay in Mount Justice. Them testing, prying, and basically trying to fix him and try to keep him alive. Now, as well, Peter would have been medical. As Peter would have been medical, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Basically, as Peter would have been bedridden after he would have been, fixed up and patched up, basically then being able to save his life, since he lost a lot of blood by the time, Aqualad found him. But being able to fix him, or let's just say save him, and pretty much putting him on bed rest for the time being. Venom in the sewer still, him wandering around, and him going back to his house, transforming back into Eddie Brock. As Eddie Brock would have thought without this power, he would have started to move out of his apartment, him hitting banks left and right in Gotham City, him coming across Batman. As basically Venom and Batman would have come across each other, Venom would have started to rush towards Batman at full speed. Batman using smoke bombs, batarangs, and a bunch of other stuff trying to take down Venom, basically him eventually being overpowered and Venom kicking him down to the ground. As Robin would have stepped in, but Robin being there as well, him recognizing the logo on the chest of the Beast, basically saying Peter, as he would have been distracted, him being smacked away into a pillar, Venom getting away. Now, Robin would have said, "What's that?" And pretty much, well, Batman would have said, "I don't know." As Batman and Robin would have made themselves to Mount Justice after Venom would have been able to get away, Venom would have gotten away with a couple $1,000. Him finding a penthouse in Metropolis, basically staying in there for the time being. Basically him making a plan on trying to locate Peter Parker, and the symbiote knowing where Mount Justice is, but him not having the DNA code or the recognition to get to one of the portals and go through them successfully. Him having to go to Happy Harbor completely and pretty much get there, be able to get through the security and get through all the security inside, plus get to the med bay where they most likely are holding Peter and a bunch of other stuff. And basically, as we get switched back to Mount Justice, as you see Batman try to go back and pretty much interrogate Peter, basically Peter being halfway awake and him still being bedridden. Basically Batman trying to figure out, pretty much this beast or this monster attacked Gotham City Bank pretty much an hour ago, and Peter has been here for a couple hours, pretty much bedridden, and his throat is slit. Basically, Batman saying that it must have been somebody different. Now, as Batman would have told Robin to interrogate him when he wakes up, or ask him what happened and where's his black suit, basically Batman trying to give more information by going through Peter's stuff in his room in Mount Justice. As he would find nothing, he would find a little container of black goo, and not thinking it's much, but taking a sample of that black goo. It's that black goo would have been left behind. The black goo being as big as, let's say, as big as a water bottle big symbiote. Basically, let's just say, the symbiote, let's say, how much symbiote was in the little canister that pretty much, Spider-Man had, would be about as big as, let's say, like a 1-inch or like a 3-inch water bottle you get at like elementary school or something like that, or like those milk cartons you get from school. Now basically, so that much symbiote. That basically, as pretty much Batman would have taken about like a quarter of pretty much of this symbiote, taking it for examination as he would leave the rest behind. Trying to figure out what is this. And basically, as he would lock it up, put it in his belt, and tell Robin that he's leaving, and basically him, just dipping. Now, as Robin would have sat by, pretty much by Spidey's bed. Now, as all this was happening, basically Aqualad would have left Mount Justice pretty much still, doing the whole entire mission with Artemis, Wally, and Red Arrow, basically still doing that mission. Basically, Speedy still doing this mission with Artemis, and their relationship blossoming somewhat in this episode. Now, basically, what would happen is pretty much, Aqualad would have still had a little bit of his head wrapped around the fact that Peter was injured very badly, and he could possibly just die in the hospital bed, but he's stable for now. Basically, what happened is pretty much, Aqualad would have just gone away, and basically him still, helping the rest of the team with their whole entire thing. And basically, what would happen as the rest of the team or rest of the group would have been, pretty much doing their whole entire thing, them trying to figure out what was going on and try to figure out what's in, Red Tornado's little base, as pretty much Connor would have pretty much, gone on top of that little base area up there, him looking around and seeing a bunch of just tech stuff that Red Tornado was doing. Now, as they come across a body-shaped silhouette on a bed, they would pull it off. As Peter would have woken up, Robin being surprised, Robin would have told, Peter to stay down. As Peter would have told him, I'm good. Basically, him saying that he didn't scratch me that bad. At least I can still talk. His voice being very deep and very, worn out, but still good enough to work. And basically, sorry, my picture cut out. So basically, what happened is doing this pretty much, as the rest of the team would have found out about everything about, Red Tornado was making his own body and stuff like that, as we get switched to pretty much, the rest of this episode, it getting led up to pretty much what would happen for the rest of the episode, the virus that's going to go around, and a bunch of other stuff, and stuff like that. Basically, it would have been a worldwide type of disease type factor. Now, as the rest of the team would have shown up there, basically them trying to figure out what was going on, and them telling about the mission and a bunch of other stuff, as they would try to figure out what was going on. Now, as Peter would have woken up, walking into the main center, Megan being very surprised at Peter's state. Peter being unmasked, but with like a bunch of bandages around his neck, and also him having some bruises and cuts on his chest, them being also fixed up. And basically, the rest of the team being very shocked at this. Pretty much, Red Arrow saying, what the heck happened to him? And basically, pretty much, Aqualad rushing towards Peter, telling him you should have stayed in bed, trying to, shuffle him back to medbay. As Wally would have asked what was happening or what happened to him, and basically he would have told them what happened about the monster and everything, about the symbiote and how it was changing him, and a bunch of other stuff, and how he found out it was alive. Now, what would happen is pretty much this would have happened, but after pretty much, Carter, or I guess Aqualad, would have escorted Peter back to medbay. Pretty much what happened is the secret of Artemis's family lineage, or family in general, would have came out. Basically, Speedy looking at her very differently, basically throwing the, pretty much souvenir he got on that mission towards her feet, and basically losing interest in her, together losing faith. Him walking away, as the rest of the team would have walked away as well. Sportsmaster visiting his daughter, and basically Artemis getting very peed off. No, Sportsmaster would have said that I'm trying to visit my daughter, and a bunch of other stupid stuff. Basically, what happened is pretty much, a Sportsmaster would have pretty much, kidnapped Artemis. At the end of this episode, we get switched to episode 24, Performance. Now, basically, let's switch to this. Now, basically, we switched to pretty much, well, a magic show at a circus where we see Artemis and Robin doing a whole big flash show. Basically, them doing kind of a trapeze artist type, style. As in, one of the kids in the pretty much audience would have been, well, let's just say a certain African American Latino Spider-Man, a younger version of him, about like it's a 13-year-old. Now, basically what happened as Robin would have fell out to the ground, him about to die, as Superboy would have thrown up a pretty much a crate pushing him upwards, and pretty much them pulling off the whole entire performance show. As we could switch to a little bit of a flashback on why they're there in the first place. Now, basically, after the first half of the episode plays out, we get shown why they're there. They tell us why they're there, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, as Spidey would have still been in medical bay, they would have all been doing this whole entire thing with basically without him. Now, as the rest of the episode would have gone somewhat, let's just say exactly like how it originally went without Peter. Now, this would have been a lot better with Peter in the performance show, because I'm pretty sure he can pull off a lot of performance. But let's just say he's going to be out, and he's going to have a big comeback in the last 2 episodes of the series. The last 2 episodes of Season 1. Now, as we get switched to Robin looking at old pictures of his family, as we get switched to Wally basically talking to Robin on the comms. After this, we could switch to pretty much the rest of the trapeze artists and pretty much a bunch of other people in the circus. Now, what would happen? Doing this, you basically see Artemis and Robin squabble and a bunch of other stuff. Robin feeling a little bit more at home and him having the same feel he had before when he's lived in a circus with his family. Now, basically what happened is pretty much the circus train would have been overran, and basically Robin would have been the only one that could stop it. And basically one of the circus people going up against them, as they would have got folded, and basically them eventually finding a way to beat the supervillain circus dude, basically them beating him. After that, the rest of the episode goes somewhat the same, them getting stirred up and a bunch of other stuff. Now, what happened is pretty much they would have came across the machine that they were making. Basically, the machine causing, destruction and a bunch of other stuff. As in this, plant monster would have tried to, or I guess Parasite, I think it was his name. Parasite that got the constrained drain powers would have started to make his way, with his machine. Him destroying most of the machinery. Now basically, or him not destroying, but him supercharging it, trying to, do his whole entire apocalyptic thing. As he would still have Megan's powers from controlling them or sucking them out of her. Not like that, guys. Okay, I know it's dirty minded people in my comments. So basically, pretty much what happened is Parasite would have tried to take down, Robin and the rest of the team. Out of nowhere, this episode would have had a little bit of a weird change. As Parasite would have been folding the whole team, as Parasite would have started to, say, really fire. Basically, as he would have had a little bit of a strain, as he would try to use Miss Martian's powers, the fire kind of, not overusing, but the fire actually overwhelming him, and the fire taking him out. Now, as Megan would have said, it's a biological, weakness that all Martians have, even people that copy their powers. Now, basically what happened is doing this, you would see that Parasite would have been taken down, the machine would have been stopped, and Megan would have, let's just say, redeemed herself. Red Arrow, pretty much, apologizing to her, and Wally also as well. And basically what happened doing this is pretty much Robin in the relationship with the circus host that was there with his parents, weren't the circus host. Robin would have done one final show as a Flying Grayson by himself. Now, basically, that's where I'm going to leave off the episode. Now, pretty much, this is going to be the last episode for the series. Now, I mainly think this is all mainly about, I guess, the only real part of this episode was Spider-Man fighting Venom, and pretty much him getting, his throat almost cut off. His throat almost cut completely. Now, basically, episode 25 and episode 26 are going to be in part 9, and they're going to pretty much end off season 1. So episode 25 and 26 are going to end off season 1 of this What If, and season 2 is going to be continuing off from that, and we're going to basically see the first 5 episodes of season 2, or first part 10, 11, and 12 are basically going to be just mainly about Peter in this world. And basically, eventually, on episode 6 or episode 5, we're going to introduce Miles Morales in, pretty much, this series, or in season 2 of this series. Now, basically, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And if you're wondering, pretty much why I didn't give Peter that much screen time or that much narration time, I guess it's because I'm setting him up to be a big runner, or a big, impact on episode 25 or episode 26. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and be safe out there. Deuces. As always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.